Welcome to the Behind the Tee podcast with Rob and Kelly. This week is our second week where we're talking about the Brier. How are you liking the curling so far, Rob?
It's been pretty interesting, I gotta say. Lots of things that we've exchanged messages out about during the week, and ready to air it all out today.
Yeah, I feel like I've been better this week. I watched a lot more curling than I did for the Scotties. But yeah, also have quite a few talking points to go through
Yeah,
today.
and we should point out that normally during championship Sundays, I guess there's only been two of them this year, but we record between the draws. Well, we're recording this during the actual Brier semifinal, which is about to wrap up. It's between Matt Dunstone and Brendan Botcher trying to advance to face Kevin Cooey in the final. So you can probably tell I've moved things around in my apartment. You might say I've rearranged the furniture so that I can see my TV and talk to you at the same time. I kind of like the way my furniture looks. I think it's dead perfect. It's my table is now in the middle of the room. It's out in the good stuff. It's okay. So
Is this episode going to be how many Russisms we can shoehorn into our episode?
I haven't done a good segue in a while. That's all I could think of. But and I have to say, I love Russ Howard. He's my favorite commentator. But after you hear him for a week, you feel like you're inside his head. And every time I think of rearranging the furniture now, I'm going to think of Russ Howard.
Well, I like that he's starting to diversify his vocabulary. I mean, I adopted dead in mine, like dead buried, dead on. But after a while, like there's so many times you can use that word, and it's nice that he's using new euphemisms and whatnot. So that was definitely been entertaining. But speaking of the playoffs, I just want to recap like our predictions because I don't
Uh-oh.
think we were as good this week as we were with the Scotties.
There's nothing new.
So we had both predicted that Gushu was gonna win for the second time back to back. That is not the case. Gushu did not even make the playoffs. He did make the championship round, but wasn't he started off strong and then just
He did, but I think
inconsistent, I
a
guess.
little bit, yeah. But just actually just a quick side note. What do you think of the format with the three playoff teams?
I don't like it. I
Yeah,
really
it
And there was almost a chance of having like a four-way tie yesterday.
there was, yeah. So that's the thing. Like, was Gushu inconsistent? Maybe a bit, but I think also he's just a victim of the fact that this is a loaded field with more than
Mhm.
ever, and just fewer playoff teams than ever. It's just incredibly hard to get in. And we knew
Mhm.
that a couple of good names would be on the outside looking in. And I mean, there were also some big surprises earlier in the week, like Mike McEwen didn't even make the championship pool.
Yes, that was a surprise for me.
You know what wasn't a surprise? New Brunswick almost did it.
Yeah,
What a great week for James Grattan.
I know.
Or start of the week. It ended a bit sadly, but
Yeah, about that, I wonder if some of the maritime teams, like Nova Scotia, did fairly well as well, and I wonder if they benefited from the fact that they were able to play during this year, whereas the other teams weren't. And I think a lot of the other teams may have took a while for them just to get into their groove, and then once they found their groove, well, things kind of restabilized. Um,
mhm.
but I was actually gunning for New Brunswick there. I was for a while they were at like the top of their pool, and I was like, "You go, Grattan, make it
That's
to the
right.
championship round."
I know. And I don't really know why we do this, but we always, when we're talking about provinces that have a hard time, we always kind of just bring up New Brunswick as our example. And
Hmm.
maybe because every week we get at least three predictions wrong on average, I think we were the deciding factor that got New Brunswick to have a pretty decent week. The moment we call them out, we know that they're going to go far. You're welcome, New Brunswick.
Yeah, so they were one of my favorites this year. I guess to name some other honorable mentions. Obviously, the Newfoundland Skip,
Oh, wow. Yes.
quite
Love that
entertaining
guy.
to watch. I don't remember exactly which game it was, but it was kind of early on in the week, and they weren't playing. I don't remember who they were playing against, but they were losing and they weren't going to win it. And the Skip is quite the outgoing character, and he kind of he goes on the ice and he calls this, like, really ridiculous hit, like a hit roll, kind of like around the horn kind of thing for one,
Mhm.
and he knew how crazy this shot was, and, he was explaining to the sweepers what they were trying to do, and, he just said something like, "Oh, well, you know what? We gotta do something, and, like, it's all we got." But he actually ended up
He
making the
nailed
shot,
it.
and
He nailed
yeah,
it.
he nailed it perfect, and they ended up taking one, and he was just, like, so happy, and I was like, "Yes, I am here for that."
Oh, yeah, it was the shot of the week, I think.
Oh, yeah. I don't think they ended up winning the game, but
And we have to take I just wanna take a moment to acknowledge, I mean, so much has been said about Greg Smith and what a personable guy he is in that shot, and yeah, what a great week to, have him there. But, something that nobody is giving him credit for is that he's a rock lifter.
a rock lifter.
Yes, like, well, when he's throwing a
Yeah.
hit, he not only lifts the rock, he really lifts it. He was bringing it back quite far behind him. It was a really good classic retro delivery. But the funny thing is that I don't really see anybody do that except Kevin Cooey, maybe, or people that are veterans of the
Mhm.
sport that have been. I was thinking he's got to be the youngest rock lifter ever because this has been totally phased out of almost every branch
Yeah.
of coaching, right? Like if I did this as a junior, if I lifted a rock, I would have gotten an earful.
Uh-huh. I don't even think I can lift the rock, like
Oh, I know. Like I could get it off the ice, but it's not going to be pretty. I think I've tried it a few times, and if I don't do incredible damage to the ice, I the delivery is not very good. Hey, there was another guy though that did it too. Remember Scott Mcdonald, who was at the Brier this year, he was
Yeah.
there for Ontario 2-3 years ago. One of his players was doing it too. He had a pretty epic rock lift, and he's about
Mhm.
our age. I was like, hmm,
Hmm.
so many things I got to try when we get curling again.
Well, yeah, well, about Scott McDonald, he's originally from Ontario, and he was kind of, well, the skip for the Nova Scotia team wasn't able to participate this year, so he was the alternate, I guess, and
Hmm.
it's kinda interesting because you don't usually have your alternate play skip, but it kinda worked out well for them.
Yeah, can you imagine yeah, playing it having a new skip kind of helicopter in and being like, all right, our first game together. It's the first day of the Brier. What a way to start. And all things, although maybe they got a little bit of playing in Nova Scotia just because they're much better off COVID wise. But, anyways, pretty decent week. And actually, I wrote it in my notes. Scott McDonald had a couple of ridiculously amazing shots. They
Mhm.
featured him once, I think, during against Quebec. And he made, you'll have to look this up after. He made like one of the greatest draws I've ever seen at the end of that Quebec game. And then his team missed a few shots, and he, no problem, I'll step up and make a
Yeah,
triple.
yeah.
Fun time for him. The field was really good, all things considered. And one of the themes I felt that came out of this Brier, I'm analyzing it like it's a book, is I think turning back the clock. I really liked how let's see, like James Grattan from New Brunswick had a pretty good week, and James Grattan
Mhm.
is a longtime veteran. I'm thinking of like Paul Fleming, since we were just talking about Nova Scotia. I feel like Paul Fleming's been to 20 Briers, and Eddie McKenzie, our good friend out of Prince Edward Island, and
Yes.
but who bigger than Wayne Madaw? What a week!
Comeback kid. I was not
Not so much a
expect
kid, but
Yeah, I was not expecting that at all.
no,
Look, I mean, he's amazing. He's an amazing player, so it's not like super surprising. But the fact that he is around the same age as Glenn Howard, and he just killed it this week. Also taking over from Glenn Howard. So Glenn, I don't even know if he played a full game at
he got
all.
into a bit of a game. Like he did throw some rocks in one of the games that they were running away with, but
Yeah, so basically, Howard was actually in a snowmobile accident a couple weeks before, well, a couple weeks, about like 6 weeks or so before the Brier, which I think you should know that, like, if you're going to a big event, you do not do any like crazy sporting activities. But, anyways, yeah, Howard got into a snowmobile accident and like injured a couple of his ribs.
and what I didn't hear this, but a listener told me that according to Kathy Goetze, like he's lucky to be alive. It was a really
Oh,
serious
really?
accident. Yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean, I
gosh.
haven't heard that myself, but that's what I was told
Well, good thing he's okay. But because of that, I guess he wasn't good enough to
to
play.
play.
So Wayne Middaugh stepped up to the plate and skipped that team,
Who
and
has not curled competitively since pre-Broomgate.
yeah,
Didn't
yeah.
really know much about directional sweeping, but learned on the fly, and damn, he did a good job with it.
Well, you know what? Middaugh too came with his fair share of injuries. He this is a few years ago, but he was in a skiing accident and really damaged his leg. Like he essentially has a bionic leg now, with
Oh
all
my
the
god.
rods and bolts and stuff in there. And he hadn't really played curling since that because obviously granted at their age, the recovery time the recovery time and the whole healing process isn't the same as if you were a 20-year-old
Yeah.
person.
Quick aside, Kelly. I don't know if like you had this rule when you were curling juniors, but one of our the rules that our coaches always set with us was we were not allowed to go to like ski hills or anything like
Mhm.
that during the winter, or especially around provincials or anything like that. It was you have to there's has to be a 3 kilometer radius between you and the nearest mountain at all times. And one year when I was coaching and we went to the nationals, the skip of the team I was coaching phoned me up and said, "Just to let you know, I'm going to a trampoline park." And
Mm-mm.
it's the one time I put my foot down as a coach. Like, hell no, you're not. You're going to quarantine for 2 weeks.
Yeah, we kinda did the same thing. We basically didn't do any sports up until the provincials, and then we still played after provincials, but after then, it was kind of a little more fair game because we weren't really playing towards
Yeah.
something anymore.
Kind of ironic that disaster would strike in this year where you can't really do much anyway.
I know, right? But I guess it worked out for them as well. Like they have 3 young guys on the team and they really played well and they were like leading
Hmm.
going into the championship round. They were like at the top of the board and unfortunately had a couple losses, so they didn't stay up there to make it to the playoffs.
Yeah, I felt like they were going to run out of gas at some point, but really watching them, it's not like they were thoroughly outplayed in the games they lost. They were a couple of shots away, and Wayne had made much harder shots all week, and it's just it didn't work out.
Hey, and in case you forgot how great Tim March is as a sweeper, because every time they were on the feature game, they just kept bringing it up, and I'm like, I get, and you see him, he's just
Oh yeah,
like 180 degrees, like parallel to the ice, and just
carve it, Tim.
yeah,
Carve it, Tim is pretty much the slogan from the 2021 Brier.
yeah. But what I kind of liked about them too, especially like Maddaw, you just have like such a chill attitude through like the whole week. And even there was one point they were losing one of the games and the other team called it or like they called a timeout and Glenn Howard comes down and like they were did not have a good setup and I think they kind of knew the game was not won. And anyways, during the timeout, Glenn Howard comes down and he's just like, "So, what do you guys want for lunch?"
I did not
And
hear that. Oh, that's
oh, you
good.
missed that? And then, I wish I wrote down, but then,
What did he have for lunch? I'm curious now.
I don't know, maybe some Bindi chicken
Probably
wings.
something from M&M's. They were a big sponsor of Team
Mhm.
Vidal back in the day.
Yeah, or maybe they went to Tim Hortons and got those fresh cracked breakfast eggs. But no, so I kinda like that they were pretty,
Laid back.
laid back, and I think that also benefited them in the fact that, like, it
Yeah,
translated to wins.
I really enjoyed it too because I know how like we've got Dunstone versus Alberta right now, and no disrespect to them, but there's all this talk of sports psychology and the training and the preparation and the breathing exercises that the meditation, everything that they do
Mhm.
to get themselves ready during a regular year, during a pandemic year, and then you have this team kind of roll in on a fluke just because they wouldn't have been at a normal Brier. They were wild card three
Yeah.
and just with really no means of preparation, having never played together, and they just kind of casually take the ice and do really well with it. I love it when these things happen.
And, so last week, I think we talked about how we kinda wanna see, I guess, like, more personality from the players and have them, like, slam a broom if they're angry or, vocalize their anger. Um, and let's say there hasn't been a shortage of broom slams, throughout
No, there
this.
haven't.
Oh, man, I feel like every shot you hear if it was, like, on that sheet, it was from, another sheet. But I kinda so an Another point to show how Madal was laid back, in the last game with Epping, Madal just, like, completely missed his shot, and he goes down to the other end, meets back up with Scott the 3rd, and Scott just goes like, "Uh-oh." Madal's like, "I was, like, a foot inside on that, eh?" And I was like he was like, "Yeah," and then, Epping ended up making a shot and took 4, and
Oh yeah, that one.
I just love the instead of just getting, like, overly angry, he was just like, "Yeah, I totally messed that up, and it is what it is," you know?
I yeah, just that and the brutal honesty which we've been asking for.
Mhm.
Like it's nice to have them like, "Yep, you were a foot inside."
Mhm. But I think it has to kinda do with the fact that there's no fans, and I'm actually kind of liking it. I know we weren't too sure about it at first because, like, it we thought, well, without the fans, there's, like, a lack of energy and whatnot, but I think because of it, we're seeing a lot more personalities from the players, and obviously, like, their mics are on for longer, and you really get those, like, little conversations that we wouldn't have gotten if there were
Mhm.
fans because either they would have cut the mics out or their voices would have been drowned out by the fans' noise. So I've kinda I've been liking that.
Yeah, we've learned a lot about what they actually say and think, this year.
Yeah, exactly.
So Kelly, do you have any, like, favorite Briar moments from the week?
Favorite Briar moments. Um, well, definitely that shot by Newfoundland, to take the 1 point was
Mhm.
definitely, I guess, probably, like, the most memorable shot. Um, I do have another one. I don't know if this is what you're trying to segue into.
Okay, go for it.
But the other day, I think it was BC Laycock versus Botcher.
Okay, I had something else. Why don't we do mine first because it's short?
Okay,
Because that one,
but
like,
you know
that will
where
have
I'm
a
going
lot to
with
say.
this, right?
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. So I wrote down just a couple of interesting things that happened during the week, and you've already covered like the Greg Smith amazing shot, and he really just any update featuring Greg Smith was always pretty funny.
Mhm.
But even though it was a good week for curling veterans, it was not a good week for poor old Eddie McKenzie out of Prince Edward Island. And they did an update that I don't know if you saw this, but I apologize for laughing at this, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Um, he was in big trouble. Like he had to make a Jennifer Jones style in off, or he was going to give up probably 3 or 4. I don't remember how many, but he was in trouble. And they do the update, and you hear the usual. All right, Kathy, what's going on sheet 3? And well, Vic, Eddie McKenzie's in big trouble. He's got to do this big in off, and they show him sliding, and I
Mhm.
feel like that doesn't look like a very good slide. I feel like he's probably missed the broom. Not that I can tell, but and here comes his shot, and this I'm quoting Kathy here, and here comes his shot, and well, his third has already gotten up and walked away, so this is not looking good. And sure enough, he missed the shot. But I love the fact that even though they didn't show it, she just mentioned, "Well, the third has gotten up and has walked away," just as he released the rock.
I definitely missed that game, but wasn't there another one too where Eddie just took himself out of the game and they
He did.
had
He took himself out of a couple of games, actually. I think.
yeah, I mean, it's great to
Yeah.
give your alternates some game playing time, but it's not something you hear very often, like, "Oh, so and so took themselves out of the game,"
Yeah.
and
I feel bad laughing, but it was not a good week. And that shot with the third just bailing was pretty funny. But yes, you brought up there was a much more notable occurrence this week.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so in the game between, Laycock and Botcher and this was, like, an important game for Botcher as well.
Very important, yeah. I think this was the last draw, yeah, of the.
Yeah, well, just because with the whole, new playoff system, like, you really can't afford losses, like, at all. Every game
Mhm.
counts essentially. Kinda like a those tournaments we used to go to where it's like a three-game knockout? So if you
Oh
lose 3
yeah,
times, you're out. That's essentially it, right? Like, you can't lose more
right,
than 3 games. So it was an important game for Botcher and Steve Laycock.
right. It was not an important game for BC. We should say they were
No,
playing for
BC
pride. I think it was the last game of the first round.
yeah, BC was already out though. So Laycock releases his rock and goes for a broom slam, and now usually when you do the broom slam, you want the padded part of the broom to hit the ice, although it should still be done off of the
Off the
center
yes, do it on
planes.
that carpet.
Yep. But anyways, the broom landed with the plastic part and essentially gouged the ice or damaged the ice in a way that really will affect like the rest of the play. And anyway, so that resulted in a 45-minute pause in the game in order to get the ice technician to come back and like fix the ice. So this is definitely something we
Right. He had left
don't
for dinner, by the way.
but it kind of raises a couple questions and just like what do you do in this case because it does not happen very often and so they kind of offered Botcher. So Botcher is like the non-offending team here. So they offered them
Right.
to move them to another sheet and to replay the end. And Botcher said, "No, like we're not the offending team. Like we shouldn't be penalized for something that we didn't do,"
Didn't do.
which is fair. Like I don't think they had to, but then at the
Hmm.
same time, now they have this whole period and like of break before they can get the ice repaired. And obviously, just like any break in momentum or something like that will definitely, mess with how prepared you were for the game or
Right.
just like mess the up with the flow. So I don't know. I just kind of like I don't. What do you think about it too, or like what do you do in this case? Because no matter what, the non-offending team is the one that's losing here in this case.
Yeah, I mean, what can you do is the real thing. I was thinking about it a lot. And, well, first we should point out that Steve Laycock was fined for it or will be
Mhm.
fined for it. Um, and that it just turned into this big negotiation of what to do. And yeah, I think you brought up the point. It put Alberta in a really awkward position in a game that they
Mhm.
had to win. And now they have to figure out all these random things that were, I don't know, not planned. Uh, it put them in a pretty awkward situation. Yeah.
I went to look at the rule book just to see like what do you do in this case, you know?
Okay. Yeah. Because that's what I'm curious about.
Do you have to replay the end? Like what is, for other infractions, if it's a hog rocked, you take it out. If you burnt it, well, even the burned, like I
Even
feel
that
like
can get sketchy.
yeah, and there's never any consensus on that one. But there is in the Canadian rule book, there is no rule for this. Like it's just a fair play. It falls under fair play and you do I guess whatever is like sensible for the situation. But in the world WCF rule book, they do have a rule about this cuz like there's the
Okay.
WCF and then there's the Canadian rules and they do differ a little bit. We can go down that rabbit hole in another episode if we want to. Um, but basically, the only thing is it goes by the number of offenses. So the first offense, the person just gets a warning, and then the second offense, they'll get like expelled from the game. But there's
Okay.
nothing like that for the Canadian one. So
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard of things like it, but I mean, only at the junior level or things like that. And the other thing is that what I do understand is a rule is that had he broken his broom, he would have had to keep playing without it,
yeah,
which that I wanted to see. That would have
yeah.
been interesting. But you're right. I think the thing that we should point out is that because Steve Laycock has been taking a lot of heat on
Hmm.
social media for this, and this is something that players have been doing all week long. So I don't think it's really fair to, I mean, he is the culprit here, but I don't think it's really fair to hold his feet to the fire any more than any of the other broom slammers because he did not try to damage the ice. His broom head was flimsy. It flipped on him. And
Yeah, and I think he is getting support so from what I heard is he is getting support from the other players, like, they all know, like, this was just, like, a bad situation, and there's no like, he didn't have any, like, ill intention in his broom slam.
no, and he apologized right
Yeah.
after.
Yeah, so I guess, like, it was the best outcome that they just waited, got the ice fix, and then continued. It's
Yeah,
just really unfortunate situation for Botcher, and I really
right.
don't think anything
Could
else
have been
could have
done
been
differently.
done.
Yeah. That's it.
But if you watch the end of that game, because Botcher
Yes.
the whole team, they really struggled for the rest of the game, like, you can tell it really messed
Mhm.
their heads and whatnot. Anyway, so Botcher makes the shot to win the game, and their reaction is, like, as if they had just won the Brier. Like, they were so happy,
Yeah, that end game.
jumping all over.
You could tell they wanted that game probably more than anything.
Yeah.
That it was an interesting thing. The only bad thing, of course, is of course this would happen in a late draw. So just when the feature game is wrapping up at like 11:30 at night for
Mhm.
us, let's go over to BC and Alberta, who are still in the eighth end. They're so behind. So it was a late night because I kind of wanted to see how it ended.
I think that was a struggle for me too, is just, like, I want to stay awake to watch the end, but then I'm also really tired and I have to wake up tomorrow morning to go to work. So, yeah,
Hmm.
curling versus sleep deprivation.
And I mean, we've talked about the whole issue of broom slamming before, and just something I think we should bring up is that too, because we've questioned, is it being enforced? Are we doing anything about it? My understanding is that the players are getting fined. We just don't really hear about it. We've heard about Laycock's fine, even though it's an undisclosed amount, just because this was hard to miss. Like you were not
Yeah,
gonna,
yeah.
but I really think you're asking the right question is that how do you handle this situation? It's an unfortunate thing. And I've been thinking about it a lot this week because I was involved in something kind of like this.
Mhm.
Uh, that where I was coaching a game at a provincial once. It was a pretty big game. And we were in an extra end and the other team they hogged a guard or something. And the player that hogged the guard was obviously it's an extra end, not a good time to hog a guard. He was
Nope.
pretty pissed off. So he launched his stabilizer, which makes Kelly mad because he was curling with the stabilizer. But no,
There's the first issue.
there's the problem.
Yeah.
But he launched it across like all four sheets. But the thing is that it didn't leave the ice. He slid it. And all four, we were the only sheet in play. So he slid it from sheet one to sheet four. I don't know. I probably shouldn't have done it, but just not a big deal. It's not like he slid it onto an active sheet.
Yeah.
But what I was not happy about, because I'm coaching the non-offending team here, is that the official who was sitting right next to me bolted out of his seat, ran onto the ice, gave this guy a talking to, brought out the other coach. They've already used up all their timeouts, so this is kind of like a bonus timeout for them. And the game gets stopped for like 20 minutes while we're doing this. We're in an extra end. I mean, we're right where we need to be, and we're not looking to have a 20-minute delay.
But I don't get what the infraction was.
That he launched his stabilizer. You're not allowed to display any form of rage. And really, what I wish is like if he had damaged the ice, then we've got a
Yeah.
problem. But all he did, I as the coach of the non-defending team, I wanted to tell the official, no, 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 deal with this after the game.
Yeah.
Like if you, first of all, I don't think it's a big deal, but deal with it after the game. Do not stop the game right now, and they did.
Like you said, it affects the non-offending team. Like any break in during a game or anything that's like gonna is breaking up the momentum is gonna affect both teams, not just the person you're
Exactly.
going after.
Exactly. And you could see like this rattled Botcher this week. Unfortunately, we lost this game too. And I don't want to make excuses or anything like that. I mean, at the end of the day, you could say that people failed to or like that Botcher failed to well, no, he did pull it off. But like yeah, I don't want to really make excuses, but at the same time, we all know that when you go 15 minutes in between your shots, you
Mm,
lose concept of draw weight, you lose
yeah.
yeah, it's my big pet peeve about playing against slow teams too, just saying.
Oh,
Okay, rant over
yeah.
with.
On that note, I don't know what you think, but I feel like the officiating was kinda lax this this Brier. We can even say the same for the Scotties. Like we mentioned before, we have been hearing a lot of more broom slamming, a lot more vocalized anger that we wouldn't in a normal year. I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of questionable hogline violations.
Oh yes, the playing without the eye on the hog thing is
Yes.
I've stopped paying attention to it just because of the lights. So I never watch it when I'm watching on TV. But yeah, there's probably been a few.
Yeah, and it's also I'm like, it could just be the camera angle because we're not seeing it
Hmm.
like head on. So maybe they're okay, but there's some of them are like, you guys came like really close to that hog line.
Oh, for sure. Remember the days of hogline judges?
Yeah. I didn't want to be that one person at the provincial championships that literally had to sit at the hog line and call these violations.
That's
Oh,
right.
that's probably like the worst volunteering position you could do.
Oh, I know.
But again, I guess like obviously I think the guys just aren't. caring much about it because they're not even at the other hog line, like watching the other team. And
Hmm.
even there, like, I don't know what you thought, but after ends, like, there were a lot of times where I thought, like, oh, they should at least measure those rocks. They're so close, for that
Yeah.
extra point. And
Yeah, they're kicking it away pretty quickly.
yeah, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, just 1." Like, and if one of the team, let's say, has been down or is losing throughout the game, and the other team just, like, scored 1 for sure, maybe 2, but the second one could be a measure, like, they don't even bother measuring, they're like, "Yeah, yeah, just take the 2 points," and, like, they move on.
I know.
Again, it could be the camera angle, but some of them, even Russ and Cheryl were like, "Oh, they should measure that," and they're like, "Oh, oh, nope, nope, they got it."
And then they just kick it. Yeah, I've noticed that too. It's I mean, maybe they have better eyes than we do, but I don't have much to add to that. Sorry.
It's alright. Well, I don't know if it was just me and my eyes being like, "Oh, well, I would have measured that," but instead
I
they
know.
weren't.
I'm kind of annoyed when we curl and other teams insist on measuring when it's like, hey, we're shot by a foot. Like, what are you talking about? Like, but other than that, I mean, I guess it doesn't hurt.
Well, at the club level, it's a little different because, like, the score difference could be, like, 6 points, and if it's a difference between, "Oh, it's gonna be 7-0 versus 6-0," like, do you really care to measure? But in certain cases, I was like,
Hmm.
"This could be, like, a 1 or 2 point swing," like, it's pretty important, so
Hmm. Hey, just very quick, Drew Brees retired. My phone just
he
popped, or
did? Oh, actually, I'm not surprised.
yeah, breaking football news if we want to mention.
In football news, do you know who extended his contract with the Buccaneers?
Oh yeah, for not a lot of money.
Well, I mean, I don't think he did it for the money, to be fair.
But isn't it like 41 million for our good old friend Tom Brady? Something like that? 41?
1 for every year of existence? Jeez. Uh, anyway, so one team I was hoping, I was kinda going for, I didn't really care much for them at the beginning, but as the week progressed, I was like, "Oh, I really hope they make the playoffs," and that was Gunlickson.
Yeah.
I think they were such a nice team to watch, and, of course, with his ability to throw a bullet down the ice and just get rid of 10 rocks in 1 shot, it's pretty
Hmm.
amazing.
I agree. I thought it was maybe like a little bit of a changing of the guard in Manitoba because for years we've heard about either Mike McEwen or Reed Carruthers. It's always been one of those two, and now they're together. So I think when people think of Manitoba on the men's side, that's the first team that pops up. And last year, Gunlickson beat McEwen Carruthers in the final, and that's why they were at the Brier. And because almost every province is sending the defending champion, Gunlickson gets to go twice in a row. Would he have won
Yeah,
the Manitoba final this year, beat McEwen twice in a row? I think a lot of people would have said no, but McEwen was there at this year's Brier, and we saw how that ended up.
exactly, so maybe he would've won another time.
You know who's got to be happy with that is Matt Wozniak.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Mhm.
he started pretty strong, early on in the week and made it to the championship round, but then kind of was already at the bottom of the pack, unfortunately, and then they just lost. So they finished
Mhm.
at the bottom, which was kind of unfortunate, but they seem like they're just always so, like, happy and positive throughout the week, and
They had an interesting approach too. Like they were, they kept well, they mentioned this a lot, but they were very driven by analytics and
mhm.
the probability of what they were likely to get out of each end, and maybe a bit too much. Some would say. I don't know.
But it worked out for them too.
Yeah, they had a really good start.
Mhm. And one thing they were talking about too is how, like, well, so like you said, they had a more unconventional approach to the game. But I guess we can say like the default strategy is, with the hammer you take two, and then if you don't have the hammer, you force the one, which a lot of teams do. I personally have not never subscribed to that. I was like, let's go for the steal as often as you can because why give away free points when you don't have to? So
Hmm.
Gunlisten kind of took that approach too. Like they're a very steal happy team,
Yeah.
or they weren't afraid to go for the steal as opposed to just bursting the one, which a lot of teams do, and I think that results in a lot of blank ends, like we've seen at the
Hmm.
Briar.
And there were a lot of blank ends this week.
Oh my
Although I think
god.
we have to qualify that though, because first of all, the aforementioned Jason Gunlickson was involved in the lowest scoring Brier game in like 40 years or something. But I didn't see the whole game. But to my knowledge, there were a lot of rocks in play. It's just they're so good at hitting that they can
Yeah.
clear all of them and end up in a blank. It's not like they played the Brier cowardly, like where they just threw up a rock. I don't even remember maybe the first end of the first day, but I don't really remember any game where they just ran rocks up and down. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that they're able to do is, like, they go for the steal, and if things don't work out, then they bail, and that kinda ends up as being a blank end. I think you texted me once, you're like, "Oh my god, this game was so like, there were so many blank ends," and I'm like, "Actually, but it wasn't, like, blank ends like you thought it would be, because usually blank ends, you think, "Oh, they just exchange rocks."
Hmm. I know. I was just I knew I wanted to use that in my argument for
Oh, for sure. But I totally agree with you that there's a lot of other teams who like to just run rocks up and down for 2-1s just to bank time. And I think that that is an argument to move away from the 10 end games. Again, this could be a conversation for
yes.
another
Oh,
time.
about that very quickly though, about that, because I've been saying I don't really agree. It's not that bad. It's the commercials that drag out a game. But I heard an argument this week that I hadn't heard before from our good old friend Russ Howard, who is a strong advocate of switching to 8 ends, because as he pointed out, with the pregame practice and all the shots coming up and down, the ice cannot stand 10 ends of curling at this level. With all the sweeping, all the rocks, by the time you have to go shoot your winning draw in the 10th, well, it's you better get out in the good stuff, because once it hits the slide path, it's dead. And but seriously, yeah, like the ice can't stand 10 ends. So that to me is the best argument for moving it to 8 ends. Is that no one wants to see you miss a shot in the end because the ice is gone.
That's definitely a good argument. I wouldn't say it's the best. For me, the best argument is still it's just too damn long.
Commercials, Kelly. It's just the commercials.
No, no, even as a player, I was never a fan of 10 ends, and I think now too the game has changed so much that a lot of teams are just again plowing through 2 or 3 ends to bank time. So what's the point of having those ends? The game is like over 3 hours long. As a fan, even without the commercial, the game's 3 hours long. So I don't want to watch that. Like there's no point to it. Like make
I
your
guess,
shots
yeah.
and I don't see a valued argument for having 10 ends. It's like, "Oh, well, 10 ends, why don't we make it 12 ends?" Or like, at
It
some
used to
point,
be.
like it used to be, and there's a reason why they moved away from that. So, yeah, I think the 8 ends is perfectly
As
fine.
long as we can play the game like with a lot of rocks in play, and if what I would be really interested in is that if we could do it and we stopped this running the rocks up and down. Not that we saw it this week, but just in general, like no, you're not going to blank the first anymore. You're going to go for it.
Yeah. Well, look, the grand slams are 8 ends.
Yeah,
No
and
problem there.
I
So,
don't think they run them up and down. Oh, and speaking of that, I just a random hypothetical. I'm not actually saying that I want this, but I'm just going to put you on the spot here. Uh, I think we talked about this, but how would you feel if you every time you blanked, you did not retain the hammer? Like the hammer would
oh,
switch
right.
over. Therefore, there's no point in blanking.
Yeah, you already asked that question. That is something could be interesting. Yeah. I mean, it wait, does it carry over in skins?
Um Skins is confusing. I know we've talked about it and we've played it, but
I think though, if that rule is implemented, I really think it's gonna change the strategy and how teams play.
I kind of want to do like a trial run. Like what how these grand slams they often mess with the rules or they try a
Yeah.
new format. I think it'd be a really cool idea to try it in one grand slam,
Mhm.
just to see like how much offense they actually get.
Mhm.
And
You know what's really gonna affect it though is it's really gonna come into play in the second to last end when the score you're up 1, down 1, or it's like tied, and you wanna blank the end to carry over the hammer to the next one, to the last one essentially. But then you can't do that, so you're essentially forcing teams to try to score and
hmm
then be in a position, I guess, that they wouldn't normally be in because they would rather be down and take the hammer in the
yeah,
next end.
I just think that anything that gets rid of blank ends, because I feel like there, even though it wasn't that bad this week, I think there are still too many. Some people think there's way too many. I won't mention names, but I saw a tweet this week where people were actually, I guess, complaining about how many blank ends there are, and it was Brian Chick, I believe. I don't know if you
Yep.
didn't he, I think he wrote he retweeted something like, "Oh, stop complaining. They're not actually. We're not going to change the rules because of what you're saying." And didn't Brian Chick play Alex the Hack Marchand in those commercials?
Yep.
All right, listen, Brian, you're full of crap. Because no, first of all, I don't really disagree with him. It's just that I have a hard time taking anything at face value from Alex the Hack Marchand, because he lied to us in those commercials. The whole Alex has been curling for only 2 weeks, and like, look at his delivery.
Yeah.
He's so pro.
Yeah,
What the
yeah.
heck? There's no way you lost to a guy with a fake hip, so don't start this.
Like we said, a lot of the blank ends were just they weren't boring ends necessarily. There were rocks in play, but the guys were just able
Yeah.
shot after shot to do a raised triple takeout. And then well, there you go. Like
Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
yeah, like that's still okay. What I have a problem with is just the draw into
Cowardly
the
play.
house. Yeah,
Hmm.
hit and roll out, draw hit. That's the issue I have with that.
One thought that I always have is that like a lot of these rules and changing of the rules is only for the people on TV. Like for us, we don't even think about blank ends very much. I mean, I guess we go for the blank when we have a chance, but we don't actively plan these things. We have had games where we blank a lot of ends because we can't hit the house.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I hate playing those really defensive games where teams just
Oh yeah, they're no fun.
yeah. I was like, we're putting up guards here. Like no more of this. You wanted to take out? No, let's just freeze to it. Put some more rocks in play. They were so boring to play, and it's not even curling. I wouldn't call it curling.
No, because if you throw hits, they don't curl. Literally.
One solution though that was proposed to again because like the whole blanking ends is has been seen as a problem, but one solution that was proposed for that is to change the way the time works for the games. So now they have like a big bucket of time to play the whole game in, but instead of having that to then have allocate certain amount of time for each end. So you can't run rocks up and down to bank time anymore. It's really just you have like 5 minutes of thinking time to play the end
Oh,
kind of
interesting.
thing. And I think that's true because now it turns a little more into a skins type play where you're just focused on playing the end. And
Yeah, anything that drives more offense. But I think what I learned this week is that it's just not that urgent. And I don't want to look too much into anything from this year anyway. It's a very unusual circumstance in which we're playing the Briar.
yeah, but these blank ends and like teams taking forever, like this has been carrying over from year to year. It's nothing
You know
new.
who doesn't take forever? You know who's the fastest curler I've ever seen?
Definitely
Kevin
not
Cooey.
Cooey.
I was joking. Actually, this is a good segue to we have to brag for a moment because
Yeah.
if you follow us on Instagram or if you follow anyone curling related on social media, you have probably heard of Briar Bingo.
Yes, I love Briar Bingo. I wish we can give credit to whoever came up with this, but we found it on social media and kind of shared it like everyone else.
Well, I was about to claim credit for it, but you just ruined
No, we're
that.
honest here. So whoever did come up with Briar Bingo, kudos to you.
Yes, and so I saw it online, and I said, "Well, like, hey," or we both saw it online, and so we printed it out, and I kept track of it during yesterday's game, and I'm happy to say, to boast about it, we have a bingo. Is that what you call it when you get them all in a row?
Yeah, because you have to scream
You
bingo.
have to yell it out. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, as of this afternoon's draw, let's see.
What squares gave us the bingo?
They mentioned the drag effect this afternoon. That was the one that cinched
Oh
it for
yeah.
us. We Our five in a row are they bring up Botcher, having lost three previous finals. An end is blanked. That was pretty easy to check
That's
off.
a given.
Uh, yeah. Other than the first end, a lead shot is shown in full.
Oh.
And here's the thing: I don't know if we have to start a new card every time a new draw comes on. I didn't do that because to me, like, it's hard, for instance, to say check off Tim March saves a rock by sweeping it coast to coast if well, he's already eliminated. So I just kept this running for the weekend.
I don't think there are official rules for this. You can just make of it as you will.
There
There
should
was
be. I
one.
want to declare ourselves a winner.
So there are 2 bingo cards for this. There was just the regular Briar and then the championship pool one. And one square that made me laugh out loud, made me lol. Was the square was like Wade Madad discovers directional sweeping.
Yes, I checked that off.
Okay, perfect.
There was also and the square also. This was a really key square to pick up because it put us at 4 in a row in 2 ways.
Okay.
It was thank you to Brad Jacobs because he missed a shot last night and dropped a pretty audible f-bomb, and that was one of the squares. It was an audible profanity is uttered after a missed shot or line call. So
Oh
that was a
yeah,
key
there's a couple
square.
of those.
So thank you, Brad.
I was just gonna say I had Brad Jacobs as my pick for playoff spot, and I was wrong on that one.
Yeah, they barely made it into the championship pool too.
Yeah,
They had a disappointing week.
they pulled a McEwen almost.
And just other quickly highlights of the bingo sheet. I'm looking at the championship round and the original one. No pebble down the middle. A bunch of Vic Routerisms. A rock should have been hogged. Kevin Cooey almost runs out of time. You get the urge to try a Tim Hortons breakfast sandwich. I did not tick that one off.
But there was back to Kevin Kuby. I think there was one game this weekend where he literally had like 15 seconds to throw his last rock.
Oh yeah, I saw that. And it's every game like that. Yeah,
Every game. But come on, those guys love to talk. Like Morris loves to talk. Hebert likes to talk.
it's
BJ's
true.
just there.
And I've been enjoying the return of John Morris, I have to be honest. But if you were looking for a guy, because he's throwing second and he's in the house, if you were looking for a guy in the house that was going to speed up the conversation, you hired the wrong guy.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Oh, yes.
yeah. But they're in the final, so
Oh, and just one, because I know we're running long, but the final is on tonight. We can now tell you it'll be between Cooey and Botcher, an all Alberta battle again. Just because Kelly loves the Briar outfits at this year's this year's Briar. If you don't believe us, listen to last week's podcast. She expresses her undying love for.
I forgot to mention another thing that I hate about those outfits.
I think it's the same thing. You go for it.
So I talked about the random slash. I talked about the cowboy hat as a reminder that is happening in Calgary. What I didn't mention, again, another thing that makes no sense. On the back of the shirt, they have their name, the province, and like an image or an emblem of that represents the province. But then in a faded color, so for instance, for Alberta, the body of the shirt is yellow. So in like a faded yellow or a darker yellow, it's like an enlarged image.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so if you have like the Fleur de Lis, you have the Fleur de Lis in white, and
Right.
then
The
in like a
smaller.
darker blue, it's like the bigger one. And same for like every province. And I'm just like, there's another design that does not gel with any of the other design elements in that shirt.
I'm okay with it, I think. I don't know.
It would have been fine if it was the only thing, but now you're like, it's just adding so much.
What I don't like is I feel like Kevin Cooey is curling for Sweden.
Yes.
It's way
Oh,
too much yellow.
okay, help me figure out one thing because I know that Kevin Cooey always likes to curl in a long sleeve shirt. He always has.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And I can't figure out if because they all for every tournament they always make or often there's like a t-shirt version and a long sleeve version. I remember when we went to provincials like you had the choice. And I can't figure out if Cooey's wearing the long sleeve version or if he's wearing a long sleeve blue shirt under the t-shirt.
I'm gonna guess it's under. I've seen him wear. I haven't thought about that, but I've seen him wear things under.
That's what I think. But then when you look at him move and everything, like the two pieces really flow together. Like there's no gap or anything around the sleeve, which makes me think maybe it's one long sleeve shirt, but then the
Interesting.
color blocking doesn't work either. And
Oh,
he's the only one who's wearing a long sleeve shirt out of all the guys.
I don't get that. More people should. When you're skipping, it gets pretty cold.
No, but in the arena it's really, really hot though.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember when I played in arenas, like even as a skip, like you're hot.
Well, there we go. I'll watch the final and I'll I'll be looking for that.
And final note here before we go, because we're ending on a fashion note. I just want to say, we all talked about how tired we are of the same four curling commercials, the same four sponsors.
Can I just point out quickly that the center square on one of the bingo cards is "I'm only human after all"? It's the equivalent of the free space.
Yeah, fair enough. So I think that yeah, Curling Canada should definitely try and like scoop up some new sponsors so we can get some diversity in our commercials. And I think especially for the Brier, they need to start going after Nike, because half of the guys playing in the Brier were playing with Nike shoes, had great designs. I know this, like we've mentioned it before, this is a trend in men's curling to not wear the traditional curling shoes. But of all the sneaker brands out there, they all go for Nike. And we all know Nike has good money, so they can produce good commercials. So I'm all on board with that. So if anyone out there works for Nike or has connections, I think should bring it up to Curling Canada.
I know I was given that thought this year. Of course, we didn't have a year, but no, you never know. Especially if they actually air commercials, I will buy Nike curling shoes.
I won't, but I do have a pair of Nike shoes myself, so I like to. I'll wear those out and about in my normal day.
There you go. You'll support them.
Yeah. So wrapping this up, final Kui versus Botcher. Who do you think is going to win? Do you think Botcher is going to win 4 times or lose 4 times in a row?
Oh, I hate it, but I think he will. I just think Kui's been the best team all week, from what I've seen. It can go either way, but I just Kui is a legend. What can I say? And John Morris is what an addition to the team. I think they've been
Mhm.
really, really, really impressive all week.
Well, definitely Kevin's going. Kevin's already won before. All the guys have already won except BJ. Has BJ won?
Yeah, he's won. He was part of the last Kui victory.
They have those wins under their belt is definitely going to be an advantage versus
Hmm.
Botcher going in. Like you really, I feel like it has to psych you out a little bit, being like, I've lost this final 3 times. They're either going to really go for, I don't know, like you can attack it 2 different ways, right? If things go or start going well for them, I think they're going to get on a roll. But if I think things start off a little shaky, it might get in their head a little bit, and I don't know.
So Kelly is dodging the question very clearly.
I really don't know. I think it's
You got
gonna
to
be.
make a call.
I would like to see Botcher win, but I think Kui's gonna win. That's my
Okay,
answer.
I have good news for you, Brendan Botcher. We both say you're going to lose, so you can plan that victory parade for if you're a Botcher fan. Because the moment we say something, the opposite happens. So
I think it's gonna be a good game. I think it's gonna be heated. Well, first of all, just the fact that Morris and Ben Hebert are in this final, there's gonna be a lot of
there'll be a little
emotions going.
passion.
BJ is gonna be the neutral factor in that team, and yeah. So I guess we'll continue this conversation next week once we know who wins.
Yeah, we'll know a bit more about mixed doubles by then too, and yeah, everything that we've gotten wrong. Maybe there'll be another bingo card for us to talk about.
Oh, I hope so. I love this. Whoever made this bingo card, keep it up, because I think it's better than our commercial game. It's a lot more
Oh yeah,
entertaining.
right after I invented that, I was like, oh man, this is way better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, that's it for this week. Bye.
See ya.